Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast with Michael Becker and Paul Peebles. During this program, you will hear interviews with real-life successful investors who will share their stories and provide useful advice on how to acquire, finance, and operate apartment complexes. Now, here they are, Michael Becker and Paul Peebles.
Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Peebles, National Underwriter for Old Capital. And typically joining me would be the smartest guy in the room, Mr. Michael Becker, but he is on another due diligence assignment. So in the podcast today, we have some friends of ours that I have known, at least one of the guys, for a long period of time. You know him. You've probably heard him on multiple podcasts out there. He's kind of the guru when it comes to multifamily management. He's made a transition into another line of work, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I want you to say hello to Ryan Wayner. Ryan,
hey, hello.
How are you?
Very good. How you doing, Paul? It's nice to talk to you.
Yeah. So Ryan and I have known each other for a long period of time. And Ryan is with Wayner Multifamily for a long period of time. He's the founder of the company. He is the guy that everybody has been listening to when it comes to B and C multifamily third-party management. And tell us a little bit about before we get into the podcast a little bit, because we're going to be talking about something completely different, and we're going to rely upon Ryan to give us some background on what he's currently doing now. But Ryan, tell us a little bit about your background and tell us a little bit more about Wayner Multifamily.
Yeah, so Wayner Multifamily manages about 27,000 units. I started my company in about 2008. Paul, I think I met you in 2010 at Chaparral Apartments, if you remember. It was a long time ago.
Oh, lovely Chaparral, of course.
Yeah, I think we both had more hair and we're probably thinner back then. But anyhow, I started the company in 2008. Before that, in 2007, I was managing some buildings that I had bought and kind of fell into that business in 2008 and really focused on building a great team, building good processes, and really focused on the client's revenue growth and expense reduction. And, the formula that I put together was American Dream. It worked well. I had brought in great team members and developed and mentored great ones over the years. And we doubled in size, and with really no marketing, we doubled in size every couple of years. In 2019, so if you fast forward about 10 years, 11 years, I ended up taking on a private equity partner who bought the majority of the business. It was at the end of 2019. Since then, I've focused on the business development. I kind of got away from the operations at Wayner Multifamily and focused just on business development and on a few other businesses that I'm working on, one that we'll talk about today. It was a great journey. I love the company. Really happy with the partnership that we took on.
That's great. That's fantastic. And as you have heard, Ryan has worn almost every hat in the third-party property management game, from doing brand new development to doing operations to doing human resources, hiring, firing, accounting, and then everything that goes along with third-party property management, from bringing in new tenants to saying goodbye to old tenants and making sure that they go away on purpose. It's called eviction. And so Ryan has a great resume that certainly kind of knows about what's going on. But one of the things that you and I have talked about for years is really been a problem for a group that wants to own maybe a B and C property. And that has really been expenses, and how do you cut expenses? And so the conversation today is what we're going to talk a little bit about, is something that Ryan and his team are really pursuing, called LeakAware. LeakAware. And let's kind of talk a little bit about that. And so, Ryan, I wanted to have you introduce one of the gentlemen that is on your team that's going to kind of give us a little bit more background about what you guys do now.
Yeah, so I want to introduce you to John Binjo. I've known him for several years now. He was in a different type of business, a technology-based business before that he owned. And I think he got sick of politics, so they sold that business. And, I had been speaking with him for several years, wanting to work with him on a new project. And we discussed several different projects, but this one we thought was a very good situation where we could be symbiotic and work together. And so, John, I'd like to introduce you.
Hey, well, thanks for having me on, Paul and Ryan. I appreciate the introduction there. Yes, previous business was in politics, and I don't know if you've followed the news for the last 4 to 8 to 10 years. It got to be a little bit much. I got to a point where it was time to look for new entrepreneurial opportunities. And Wayner and I met up, and happy to be doing things here at LeakAware and kind of running the show.
So let's talk a little bit about LeakAware and let's talk a little bit more about some of the line items on an operating statement. You have property taxes, and that's something that you can or can't fight on different in different areas of the country. Some areas that go from what the original valuation of the property is. Sometimes it goes with having it assessed again every year. Maybe it's every 2 or 3 years on the property. So sometimes you cannot change, you're not in control of the property taxes. Maybe you fight them and you have to sue the taxing authority to try to get that number down. We have insurance. Insurance is another large line item. And here in Texas, we have hail and we have fires on properties, and we have all kinds of water issues. Penetrations. I bet Ryan can talk a little bit about some issues for insurance claims and repairing properties and trying to bring them back to rentable condition. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then we have like repairs and maintenance on the property, and how to keep the property going. I mean, you always have to continue to put money back into the collateral. Your bank is your largest partner in the deal. They want to make sure that collateral continues to be in good shape. That you just don't push out all the money's back to your investors, but make sure that you make a deliberate attempt to keep the property going and keep the asset in good condition. Some of these 1960s, 70s assets are in great condition because they were always meticulously maintained, and some of them have not been in good shape. And so, we'll maybe talk a little bit about that. But one of the largest line items is the utility costs, and that is something we're going to talk about today with Ryan and John with LeakAware. And LeakAware is not where they're looking for a leak underground. And maybe sometimes that word is not truly what it is let's kind of talk a little bit about what LeakAware does and what the impact is for people that engage LeakAware. Right?
Yeah, I'd like to let John run with it, but he can explain the LeakAware in greater detail. To give a little history on myself, when I was building my business, and the way I looked at the operations of a property is that you have extremely controllable expenses, semi-controllable expenses, and certain expenses that you have almost no control of. And Paul kind of summarized those very well. I mean, taxes, you have very, very limited control. I mean, you can sue, and that there will be success with that. There's some different vendors that work on that, but you really can't push the municipality in one way or the other effectively. And then insurance is, you can control your loss runs to a certain extent, but you can't really control whether you have a fire or a hailstorm or anything like that. So what we have, so those are sorts of things that I always looked at as, they're kind of baked in the cake. We'll keep an eye on keeping the insurable value low and so forth, but there's not a whole lot of control in those sorts of things. And then you have things that you have more control over, which are, payroll costs. It's not only just trying to hire somebody at a low price, it's using their time and setting up a methodical system on property that has accountability in it, that you can get the most value out of the on-site employees without whipping them on an hourly basis. So there's ways to get more value out of employees. The biggest amount of value you can get pushing employees is making a more methodical approach to their job every day, and that they know what to expect on 85% of their day, that there's a guide on, okay, do this, then do that, then do this, versus throw somebody out there that's real cheap and see if they can get the job done. Obviously, negotiating upfront payrolls is part of that formula, but the majority of it is creating a system and a culture that methodically approaches solving problems on the property so that they can stay on top of it, and that you're not going back and fixing things that were done improperly to start with, or that it's so scatterbrained on property that nobody can work efficiently in that environment. So that part is huge, and it affects it comes into the utilities, and more specifically, the side of the utilities that we think is the easiest to affect change on is the water. And when I say water, I'm talking about water and sewer. So I've really hyper focused on that, literally a decade ago, and started with, water readings on Excel sheets and monitoring them daily to be able to catch leaks. Then I came out with, I had that developed into an app. It was pretty rudimentary, but it was better than anything that the market had before. And then it kind of graduated into a basic form of LeakAware, where the maintenance tech would input the water usage every morning, and we could see what the expected daily use was and how it related to that. And, a lot of those things helped significantly, but all of those things had too many hands in the pie. There's just way too much room for error on each and every one. So it's very hard to scale. As you get larger and larger, it's very difficult to monitor all of those things. So really focused on different pieces of it that we could automate. And like I said, where it still had the accountability function, where supervisors could monitor efficiently what was going on site, and then also that it was being fixed in a timely basis, but also that for the on-site personnel, it automates everything that a computer can do and kind of in a software and hardware can do, and basically just gives them a punch list right from the convenience of their own handheld device. So John, I may want to, or Paul, if you wanted to interject or anything, I was going to kind of hand it off to John to kind of explain what the software hardware solution was.
I want to hear John's exactly what this is, because this is one of those line items on your operating P&L that you have control over. And, when as my uncle, who used to be in the toilet business, would always say, when you pee, think of me. It is something that water going down the toilet or down the bathtub or down the sink is a commodity, and it can be a very expensive commodity for the landlord that has to continue to pay an incredible amount of money on a weekly, monthly basis for sometimes tenants that are not paying attention to the amount of usage that is being done onto the property. And so, like Ryan was saying, is how do you increase your value of the property is one of the things used to reduce the cost of your utility expenses, one being water. And so I want to bring on John to kind of go through, create a kind of a bigger picture again.
Can I mention one thing to that exact point, Paul? Sure. And I hate to kind of cut. As you said, there's the cash flow effect of it, which is horrendous. A bill that should be $5,000 at $7,000, that's $2,000. That's not going into your bank every month. But to add insult to injury, when you go to refinance, which we have a very smart person on the call right now that refinances loans, or if you decide to sell the asset, we all live in a world of cap rates and net operating income. So let's say you're losing $2,000 in cash flow a month. That's horrible. But let's put that's $24,000 in lost NOI a year. Now you put a 5% cap rate, which is probably being a little liberal in this environment right now, and you're looking at $240,000 of value. Literally, it's not just the $2,000 a month flushing down the drain or the $24,000 in cash flow flushing down the drain. And I just did the math wrong. That's actually $480,000 in a sale price. That's that changes your IRR significantly. That changes it significantly for the LPs in these deals. And in most of these GP syndication deals, that there's a waterfall, the actual GPs get even a much larger hit to what they make at the sale of a property based on something that is extremely controllable. So I'll hand it off to John. I apologize for interrupting.
One more point before we throw it over to John. Ryan's absolutely correct, is that if you're letting this expense get out of control, and let's just say $2,000 is the minimum that's getting flushed down the toilet every month, you're letting a lot of this money just get pissed away, so to speak. and valuation. And that has a direct impact. And so I want to kind of figure out by John again, how do you avoid spending, in our example, an extra $2,000 a month by using LeakAware?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. That's a great setup because one of the things that we find quite simply in response to your question would be people don't have the data. When do you get the data on water issues? You get it on your next water bill, at which point you're already paying for the problem. Some folks are coming in, they're buying properties where the water bill was already ridiculously high. So they kind of just see that as the status quo. In fact, everything you've been saying, I just posted a video earlier this morning on our LeakAware accounts talking about some of the things you've been talking about, which is trying to get into this $35 to $52 per door a month spent on water. And how often when we have these conversations, folks don't really realize that water can get that low. They assume, well, I replaced some toilets or some fixtures at some point, and hopefully that'll take care of it. Well, we're talking about Class B and Class C properties here. You can make replacements. You can try your best. You can, quote unquote, keep an eye on things. But unless you're being extremely vigilant, unless you're deploying technology, it comes down to infrastructure problems. You are going to have problems on properties that are just old. And where LeakAware comes in, as Ryan's already kind of talked about it, was he had a property that was about $3,000 a month in water, and 1 month it was $13,000. That's an enormous
How does
cost.
that happen? How do you go from $3,000 to $13,000 in 1 month, Ryan, of a water bill?
Call it about 15 toilet flappers that had went bad, and one leak at the boiler that was missed where the water wasn't super visual to be able to be seen. So it's typically a combination of things, but that was this particular deal. And just to add to that, I demoed this product for my own purpose, for my own benefit in March and April. And by June, my water bills, some in May, some of them, the ones that we put in March, were down over $20,000 over 700 units a month. Now it's water and sewer combined. I'm not just saying water and not, so that's water and sewer combined. The water bills went over $20,000 and they've maintained that lower level since then. Now we've had leaks pop up, and then John can kind of explain the software, but anyhow.
Before we get to the software, talk about the billing piece of the deal, because if there is like a underground water leak, because that also is discovered too on some of this stuff, is that these water bills are printed out on X date and they're delivered to you through the mail. And
yeah, I mean, look,
you may not see it for 2 or 3 months. Yeah,
maybe not 2 or 3 months, but it's a good 6 to 8 weeks, definitely. So let's say on November, or we're in November today, a leak sprout, 4 or 5 leaks sprout up on a meter. And then let's say they just read the meters October 30th. So they're not going to read the meters till the end of this month. Then they're going to go to the city, process the invoice, provide that invoice about 2 weeks later. This is in Dallas. Some cities are later. And then you may get it in the mail. You know, you get it a week later in the mail. You open it up, you go to pay it. It gets recorded in your financials. All of a sudden, you're 6 to 8 weeks behind the 8 ball. And, you know, what we've noticed on the dozens of properties we've already installed it on, because we have been selling to different groups, is many of these problems, they don't even catch them the next month. You know, they're focused on occupancy given COVID and, you know, rent relief checks and where are we getting money here? And they lose focus on one of the major factors that can drag their NOI down.
And there's a certain educational piece to all of this as well, which I think Wayner was just alluding to. I mean, we had a property, only 106 units that we deployed on recently, that we did a very fancy video kind of congratulating ourselves and our customer because he was saving almost $5,000 a month after deploying. Now he's up over $6,000 a month. And as he pointed out, he made a great point. Because as Ryan was saying, we have labor shortages right now. You have people on site who just have a bunch of different things to do. And as he pointed out, $6,000 additionally a month, I might as well have 5-6 more units on my property, if not more. And so reframing the conversation to make sure people understand that, yeah, that one quote unquote little line item for water down there is a huge deal. And as you pointed out earlier, the one you can control. And that kind of brings us into what LeakAware is all about. I mean, we built this software to really kind of do a couple of different things. On the one hand, you want to make it as lightweight and easy to use as possible, because the maintenance folks who are out on the property every day and using it, there's some obvious language barriers there sometimes. They're not as tech forward oftentimes as, say I am, who has 17 screens in front of me any given day. And we've made it so easy that it doesn't matter if somebody spends all day on their phone or not, or whether or not they have issues with technology, they're able to pick it up really quickly. But then on the other side of that, we also have to build something that's as meaningful as possible for owners and operators without them having to get in the weeds every day and have yet another thing they need to look at and another thing they have to manage. So what we put together was kind of a two-pronged approach in terms of building this out. And so we have the ability to put hardware on your meters that collects data in real time. So as you're going throughout the day, as you go to bed at night, you don't have to worry that there's something off or that you're not getting data at that point. We're bringing in that data 24/7, second to second, minute to minute. So that part's great. But really, that's only one part of the problem. If you have something that tells you have an issue, but then there's nothing to go fix the issue, there's no ability to manage fixing the issue, you don't really have anything but a fancy fire alarm and no hoses to go put out the fire. So the second part of the app is this auditing process that we have built in, which I believe Ryan's already talked about a little. But basically, if a leak is identified and flagged, your maintenance and property management is notified that, hey, it's time to get to work. Let's go out there. And we will have already loaded up every water fixture and every unit on that complex so that they can go in and just no leak, minor leak, major leak. And as they identify those issues and save them, another audit is set up for fixing everything. So from the moment there's a problem till it's all fixed, you have insight into all of that.
Let's talk a little bit about how people spend so much money on water and how the tenants, so without even maybe possibly even knowing it, are abusing or using too much water. Name 4 or 5 different ways water goes down the sink.
It's a great question. A few of them that aren't even technically leaks immediately come to mind. We walked a property with about 260 units last week. They were missing 135 aerators. So the aerators are the little thing that goes on the faucet to control the flow of water. A lot of times tenants will literally just rip them off because they want greater water flow. They have not made another fix on that property yet. We found hundreds of problems. They just replaced those aerators and already are saving almost $600-700 a month just from that. So it's just one little thing. Similar to that, again, not a traditional leak, but the diverter in a shower. So you go into the shower, you pop the pin on the faucet so that it goes to the shower so you can get the water flow through the shower head, but there's still water coming out of the faucet as well. That shouldn't be happening. If the diverter is good, all of the water should be diverted to the shower head at that point. If there's water coming out the other one, there's a problem there. Again, not a traditional leak, but something that we find time and time again as we go through. Beyond that, there's some really big things that come to mind. Toilets, obviously, I'm probably not breaking any news for folks who are in the industry, but they're just a huge source of problems. And one of the biggest thing we see, it's not just tenants even sometimes the maintenance, they'll go through, we'll go with them, and they'll hear a toilet running, and they'll either mark no leak or minor leak on it. And I have to explain, well, no, that's a major leak. And they don't seem to understand, and particularly the tenants, a constant flow of water adds up. It's the reason when you're on a cruise ship and it's only going 20 miles an hour, you're still halfway around the world when you wake up the next day because you just never stopped. You kept going, you kept moving the whole time. And so this idea that, a flowing or a running toilet, if you're a tenant, you just say, oh, it's kind of annoying in the background. You might not report it. But there have been properties where we find 6-8 running toilets and instantly see the water bill cut dramatically just from that. So those are a few that come to mind just right off the top of my head there.
And Ryan, talk a little bit about everybody's been the last 5-10 years trying to put these new low flow toilets in. Is that a great
idea? Yeah. I mean, look, we walked probably 3,000 units in the last 30 days. And I would say, and John can correct me if I'm wrong, about, I think it was 1,200 of the units had the water conservation company come in and replace the toilets and the aerators and so forth.
Yeah, that's right.
Literally, we have not as many, but there's at about a 50 to 60% the rate. Those toilets that have been installed in the last 2, 3, 4 years, they have the toilet flappers go bad on those as well. So we're going into a water conservation impacted unit, and they still have an $85 a month per unit water bill. And you're saying, what's going on here? And great, you can have a 0.8 toilet, but if you have a flapper that's bad, it does you absolutely no good. And those things don't last forever. In terms of what we were talking about, the tenants, even if the tenants are paying a prorated share of the water, they look at themselves as one of 300. It's not or one of 200 units, however big the building is. They're not, highly incentivized to report leaks as they come. And that would be great if they did, but it's human nature. And I think we've all kind of leave the lights on at a hotel more than we would at our own house. It's not a value judgment on the person. It's just human nature. When you're not paying for it, or you're paying in a big prorated kind of part of the village type of thing, you don't take care of these things the way you would in your own house. Where if you were in your own house, you paid the full water bill, you know that, hey, I need to get this toilet fixed immediately. It's costing me $8 a day, or it could be even up to $20 a day, depending on how bad that flapper is. So those are huge, huge indicators. One thing I wanted to add is, you have the software system that pops it right up, takes them unit by unit. It's all mapped to the units that are connected to that meter. It only sends them to those units. The nice part about and I'm putting my CEO shoes on, is I'm not going to be able to go in there and monitor all of that stuff that's happening on site, that down to the fixture level. But the dashboard that I have, and I use it for my own properties, is just to say, okay, I see that a leak happened. Then I just go on to the audit page, and it just goes right there. It shows, 32% of the units have been audited. So I know I can keep my on-site staff accountable without getting way into the weeds. If I see a leak pop up and our graph shows red, and we can give you a visual presentation someday, it'll show exactly what percentage of it is an actual leak. I can look at that and say, oh, look, there's a leak. All right, leaks happen. Now, if the next day I don't see that the audit started, well, guess the first thing I'm doing is I'm going, hey, go do the audit now. And in the future, I expect it to be done within 24 hours. I'd love to say people just go and do their jobs, but Paul, I've been in the management business. I built the business to over 1,000 employees. There's maybe 10% of those that, without supervision, run at full speed. In the world of reality, we do have to keep people accountable. They need to know somebody's tracking their progress. So it doesn't just go to the audit. I know, they've audited 100%. Great. Now I see the percentage of how many of the fixes that they've done. And I can track that just by simply, I pull up my dashboard right on my phone. So I'm not typically opening my laptop, but a lot of people work on their laptop a lot more. But I can kind of be eating lunch, pull up the thing, see, hey, they didn't get started on the audit. What's going on? Or, hey, the audit's complete. Within 5 days, all the repairs should be done. What's going on? Why didn't they make any progress today?
Yep.
And that helps. Go ahead.
So, I mean, you are absolutely excited about trying to save people water, and you are the absolute expert with, your background of managing 27,000 units, that you have probably the greatest knowledge of what really works and what doesn't work. And this LeakAware, the technology that's out there right now that you guys have created and put into use, is really unbelievable on the amount of money that it saves and the amount of implicit value that it creates. And so, like your first example is that it created, by saving the $2,000 a month in water spend, a little bit less than $500,000 on value. So I know that there's a price for this, and I know that John and Ryan want to talk to you a little bit more about price. But John, I mean, you're just biting at the bit here, trying to get a couple words in edgewise from two guys that love to talk all the time and love to hear themselves talk. So, John, kind of give us the low low bottom shelf about what your thinking is about how people should get into LeakAware.
Yeah, I think right now what we're offering everybody is just a free water analysis. I actually just shared that this morning with a bunch of folks. But if people are interested, they can reach out. And what we'll do is we'll ask for their trailing 12 water bills and really just perform an in-depth analysis. Because like I said, a lot of folks, they're trying their best. They think they're doing good work. And then when the quote unquote experts come in and look at it and we compare it to nationally and so forth, we find, okay, $140 a unit is not a particularly good water bill. You got work to do. So that's one of the things we're offering just as a way to let folks know kind of where they stand.
What's interesting about this program is it just doesn't take a look at it, what it is right now, but it's ongoing monitoring of the amount of money you are pissing away, so to speak, every month, every year, every time that you see your water bill on what it is right now and what it should be. Those are two different things, unless you have a group like Ryan and John and their LeakAware software and hardware services that monitors each and every different switch on the water meter to kind of determine what that flow is. And again, this is not to the individual toilet or the individual unit because it's not set up that way. It is set up for each water meter. So you may have if you're a large building of say 100, 150 doors or so, you may have 3, 4, 5 water meters that are coming in. And if you just look at one water meter and you make the assumption that they're all the same, that's not right. You need to have it monitored all the time. You need to have it monitored day in, day out, every day, every week to kind of determine about where the money is being spent. Again, just like what Ryan and John were saying, is that the money is the important thing, but the most important thing is really saving the world water. I mean, you guys should be getting medals from that ESG, the Environmental and Social Governance group, that everybody is trying to make this a green type of effect. And so, and again, any last words before we wrap it up here?
Yeah.
I'm going to start with John.
Go ahead.
John first, and I'll have Ryan have the last word.
Yeah, two real quick things. And I really appreciate having us on. You kind of said something just now that made me think about kind of how we proposition this to folks. And it brings up this idea of assurance and insurance. You want assurance that things are getting done. That's baked into this application. The data is coming in real time. You don't have to worry about it. That's assurance. It's all being handled. But then we find leaks, we fix leaks. Again, there's an entire workflow for that. So there's an assurance that things are getting done. But then, as you just pointed out, there's the insurance side of it. Even on the rare properties where water is all just pretty standard, pretty good to go at the moment in a pretty decent range, you're one problem away from being out of range, from wasting money, again, from having those issues. And if you're not being proactive in your monitoring and your solutions and utilizing and leveraging technology, you're just going to find yourself in a bad way. So there's that. And then just real quickly, again, if anybody listens today, they want to learn more or see LeakAware in action, our website is leakaware.com. And if you go to leakaware.com/demo, you can sign up for a demo anytime. I walk you through those myself. So I will be there to show it to you. We do it in 10, 15 minutes. So it's not a huge time commitment or anything, but would love to talk with anybody more because, that's our entire point, is trying to save people time, money, and water. So appreciate your time.
Ryan has the final word. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a few minutes to kind of, I've built the business from scratch. It was a very successful business, still is. The way I approach any problem, whether it's a big building, a water issue at a small building, really any problem, it's a 3-step process. It's identify the problem, step 1. Step 2 is to address the problem. And we all want to get to step 3, which is resolution of the problem. LeakAware, through the hardware and the constant monitoring, that identifies a problem. That's not enough. That's just knowing you have an issue. The second step is the addressing that problem. And what we created at LeakAware was a very scalable, easy system for non-technical person. Everybody has smartphones that guides them through addressing the issue. And then part of having that issue addressed is that there's accountability to the end user, to the employee. So we want to help with identify the problem, that our software helps address the issue. Of course, it still needs the maintenance guy to fix the toilet or whatever. So it's just a tool to help them address the issue efficiently and effectively. To number 3, to get our resolution. Those bills down to $45 a unit a month, or maybe it's $50 a unit a month. Those are the things that create the huge value in terms of the sales price of a building, the cash flow, and reputation. If you go into a situation where the economy is not doing good and there's certain issues on the property with occupancy, but you're known as an operator that has squeezed every last penny out of all the controllable expenses, it's going to help you as an operator enhance your reputation.
Yeah. So let me just finish up here. And Ryan and John, certainly do appreciate you guys coming on and kind of telling me the story and giving us the message about trying to save water. There's a difference between, cost versus value. This is going to cost you. Not a huge cost, but there's a cost that to put it into the system, to continue to have it monitored. But think of the value that it will create in terms of the bottom line to your property on an ongoing basis. And that's something that is a tangible number that we will see when you either go sell the property, like what Ryan was saying, or go to refinance it. That is such an important deal where your utility line items go down and have the ability to stay down over a period of time. So again, LeakAware, certainly do appreciate John being on and Ryan being on. Thank you guys for getting us updated what's going on. So again, thanks. Again, I'm Paul Peebles. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please join us at oldcapitalpodcast.com to sign up for our weekly email updates. We'll see you next week for another great interview.